He had $23 left. That was it. Everything else was gone. Marcus stood outside the gas station on Christmas Eve with a crumpled envelope he'd been holding onto for 11 days. The last of what he had after the rent, the groceries, and the electricity bill that had already been extended once. $23. He was saving it for tomorrow morning. For the one small gift he hadn't yet been able to buy for his daughter, a stuffed rabbit she'd pointed at twice in the dollar store window and never asked for out loud because she already knew better than to ask. He was almost at his car when he heard it. Woman. Sitting on the cold concrete by the air pump. She wasn't dramatic about it. She wasn't holding a sign. She was just crying, the quiet kind, the kind that has run out of sound and is just breath now. And a little boy maybe 4 years old was leaning his whole body against her arm watching the road. Marcus stopped. He told himself to keep walking. He got 3 steps. He turned back. "Ma'am." His voice was low. "Teddy. You okay?" She shook her head. She couldn't talk yet. He crouched down. The boy looked at him with those enormous, serious eyes that children get when they've been sitting still too long and don't understand why. She finally said it. They'd been asked to leave the motel. She had $9 for the night. The shelter was full. Her sister was 3 states away. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. He stood there with the envelope in his hand for a long moment. Then he gave it to her. All of it. $23. He walked to his car, got in, sat in the dark, and drove home to his 6-year-old daughter Lily with nothing. That was Christmas Eve. 48 hours later, a black SUV pulled up to his door. And then another, and then another. Marcus Hale was not always this man. 3 years ago, he was a project manager at a mid-size construction firm in Columbus, Ohio. He had a joint checking account, a house with a working furnace, and a wife named Denise who made the world feel organized. He coached Lily's Saturday soccer team. He had a grill. He used it. Then the divorce. Then the custody arrangement that gave him Lily full-time after Denise moved to Portland for a job, and took the second income with her. Then the layoff. 9 months ago. 1 email. Restructuring. He didn't spiral. That was the thing people never understood about Marcus. He didn't fall apart, he just quietly, methodically dismantled everything that wasn't essential and kept going. He sold the house. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex where the parking lot lights flickered and the hallway always smelled like someone else's cooking. He picked up gig work, delivery routes, weekend warehouse shifts, a couple of furniture assembly jobs he found on an app. It was never enough, but it was always close enough that he could maintain the illusion of stability for Lily. For Lily's sake, the apartment was fine. It was warm. There were drawings on the fridge. There was a specific corner of the living room where she had arranged her stuffed animals into what she called the meeting, a semicircle gathering of bears and rabbits and a single plastic dinosaur she'd won at a school fair. Every night before bed, she checked on them. She was 6. Her whole face lit up when she laughed, and she laughed at things adults stopped noticing. A pigeon walking funny, the sound a spoon made in an empty bowl. Marcus worked around her schedule like it was sacred because it was. His wound was simple, stated plainly. 1 bad year had turned into another. The math hadn't worked for 9 months. And by Christmas Eve, the envelope with $23 was not money he was spending. It was money he was rationing. The woman at the gas station, he would learn later that her name was Carol, had driven from Akron with her son, Micah, after her landlord changed the locks on the 22nd without legal notice. She had a case number from a housing lawyer she couldn't afford. She had her son's winter coat and a bag of crackers in her car. She had no plan for Christmas morning. Marcus didn't know any of that when he gave her the money. He just saw a woman who had run out of options, and a boy leaning against her like she was the only solid thing left. He told himself it was fine on the drive home. $23 wouldn't have bought much anyway. He told himself that too. Lily was still awake when he got back. She was on the couch in her pajamas, the ones with the small stars on them, holding her favorite rabbit, a worn brown stuffed animal she'd named Clover, watching a Christmas special with the sound turned low because she'd learned without being told that quiet was respectful when Dad was tired. She looked up. Did you get the thing? Not tonight, Bug, he said. Okay, she said. Just like that. Bae. She went back to the TV. He stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment watching her. The blue light of the screen soft on her face, and something in his chest did a slow, quiet collapse. He made her toast and a cup of warm apple juice because it was what they had. They sat together on the couch. She fell asleep against his arm before the special ended. He sat in the dark after she was in bed and ran the numbers again. Rent was due in 9 days. He had 3 scheduled delivery shifts between now and then. His car needed an oil change he'd been deferring for 6 weeks. The math was bad. The math was the kind of bad where you stop doing the math. He slept 3 hours. Christmas morning was quiet in the way that required real effort to make quiet. Marcus had wrapped 3 things. A small puzzle he'd found at Goodwill, a library book she hadn't read yet, and a single candy cane, in newspaper comic strips. Lily woke up and unwrapped each one with the same serious, careful attention she gave everything. She did not ask about the rabbit. She held up the candy cane. This is the good kind. I know, he said. Are you going to work today? Later. Just a short shift. She nodded. I'll be good. You're always good. She looked at him with that steady 6-year-old logic. Then why do you look sad? I'm not sad, he said. I'm just tired. She considered this. Then she put Clover in his lap. Clover helps, she said. He drove his shift. 2 hours in, his phone buzzed. Not a job notification, but a text from an unknown number. Hey, you helped me last night. You gave me everything you had. I don't know how to say thank you, but I wanted you to know we're okay. Pearl. He stared at the text at a red light for a long time. He typed, glad you're okay. Merry Christmas. He put the phone down and kept driving. That should have been the end of it. But Carol had told someone about him. Not on purpose. She was talking to her sister on the phone while waiting for a bus, and the person sitting next to her had been listening. His name was Raymond. Raymond was waiting tables at a diner 3 blocks from Marcus's apartment. He was 54 years old, had seen enough of the city to know when a story was real, and he'd heard Carol say Marcus's name twice. Once when she described what he did, and once when her sister asked why a man with nothing would give away his last $23 on Christmas Eve. Raymond didn't know Marcus. But Raymond knew people. That night, Marcus came into the diner for a coffee. The cheapest thing on the menu, $1.89, paid in coins from his cup holder. Raymond poured it without being asked. Set it down. I heard about what you did last night, he said. Marcus looked up. What? At the BP station. Pearl. The woman with the kid. Marcus's face went careful. Neutral. I just gave her a few dollars. Your last few dollars. She needed them more. Raymond studied him. You got people. I got a daughter. And that's enough. Raymond refilled his cup before he'd finished half of it. Didn't charge him for the second one. I know a guy, Raymond said. Works with some kind of charitable fund. I'm going to make a call. Marcus shook his head. I don't need a handout. It's not a handout. It's a phone call. I appreciate it, but just let me make the call. Marcus looked at him. He was quiet for a long moment. One call, he finally said. You make the call. I don't want anything pushed. Understood, Raymond said. Marcus walked home in the cold with 2 cups of coffee in him and something that wasn't quite hope but was in the same neighborhood. 3 days later his transmission went. The car just stopped. He was on his way to a delivery shift, the one shift that week that paid enough to matter, when the transmission seized on the expressway and the engine made a sound he'd never heard before, a low mechanical moan that meant it was over. He coasted to the shoulder. He sat there. Trucks blew past. The car smelled like something burning. He called his shift manager and lost the shift. He called a tow. The tow cost $90, which he did not have, so he put it on a card he'd been trying not to use. The mechanic called him back 2 hours later. Transmission replacement on a 2009 Civic. $1,400 minimum. He did not say anything for a moment. Anything cheaper, he asked. You could look for a used one. That gets you to maybe 800-900. Okay. He hung up. He walked to the bus stop. He picked up Lily from her after-school program 40 minutes late, which he'd never done before. She was the last kid waiting. She had her backpack on and her coat zipped up to her chin, and she was sitting on the bench outside holding Clover, watching the parking lot. She saw him and her face did the thing where relief and worry happened at the same time. The bus was slow, he said. I knew you'd come, she said. He picked her up and held her too long and she let him. Without the car, the delivery shifts were gone. Without the delivery shifts, the math became impossible. Not difficult. Impossible. He filed an emergency hardship request with his landlord, a form he had to print at the library because his printer was out of ink. He applied for an emergency utility credit. He called 2 old colleagues about contract work and left messages that weren't returned. He picked up a 2-day warehousing shift that required 3 buses each way and paid $14 an hour for work that made his back ache for days after. Raymond called him twice that week. Both times Marcus almost didn't answer. But he answered. The call I made, Raymond said on the second one. The guy I talked to, he wanted to verify the story. That okay? What kind of verification? Just background. Nothing invasive. Marcus was quiet. Marcus. Yeah. Let people help. I don't know how to do that. Raymond didn't answer right away. Then, nobody does the first time. The second crisis came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Lily had been asleep for hours. Marcus was at the kitchen table with the overdue notices fanned out in front of him like a losing hand of cards. He had a yellow legal pad where he'd written the same numbers in different orders, as if rearranging them would change what they added up to. They didn't change. Quiet. Cold draft from the window. He thought about his father, a man who had worked 2 jobs his whole life and never once said it was hard. He thought about the first time he'd held Lily, about the specific weight of her, about the wild implausibility of becoming someone's entire world in one instant. He thought about the $23. He thought about whether that had been wisdom or stupidity, and he couldn't decide, and for the first time since the divorce, since any of it. He put his head down on the folded arms on the table and he just stayed there. Me. Nothing left. Lily patted in at some point. He didn't hear her until she was standing next to him. She put her hand on his back. Small hand. Barely there. Daddy. He lifted his head. Made his face calm. He had 11 years of practice at this. 3 years as a dad. Hey, Bug. You should be asleep. I heard you, she said. He hadn't made a sound. I'm fine, he said. Just thinking. She looked at him with those eyes. Clear, steady, 6 years old and already knowing more than she should. Are we going to be okay? She asked. He opened his mouth. The word came out clean, no hesitation, because it wasn't a lie. It was a decision. Yes, he said. We're going to be okay. She nodded. She believed him completely. That was the most devastating thing of all. She believed him completely. She went back to bed. He sat in the kitchen until the light changed. The knock came on a Saturday morning. Marcus was in the kitchen making oatmeal. Lily was at the table in her pajamas, drawing something elaborate with her crayons. A house or a forest or both. It was hard to tell with her, with Clover propped against the sugar bowl. He wasn't expecting anyone. He dried his hands on a dish towel and went to the door. Raymond was standing there. That wasn't strange. What was strange was the man standing behind Raymond. Tall, 60s, a long charcoal coat, the kind of posture that comes from decades of walking into rooms and being waited on. Behind him, through the window at the end of the hallway, Marcus could see a vehicle parked at the curb. Then another. Then another. 5 black SUVs in a row along the street in front of his building. Marcus looked at Raymond. Raymond said, "This is Gerald Marsh." The name meant nothing to Marcus. He said so. The man named Gerald Marsh said, That's fine. It means something to quite a few people, but it doesn't need to mean something to you. His voice was quiet, measured. He looked at Marcus the way people look when they're checking whether what they've been told is real. May I come in? Marcus stepped back. Gerald Marsh walked in with Raymond and one other man, quiet, professional, carrying a leather folder, and stood in the small living room. He looked at the drawings on the fridge. He looked at the stuffed animals in the corner, arranged in their careful semicircle. He looked at Lily, who had turned around in her chair and was looking at the strangers with complete, unself-conscious curiosity. "Hello," she said. "Hello," Gerald said. He seemed briefly to be something other than a man with 5 black SUVs outside. He turned back to Marcus. "You gave a woman named Carol Harrison $23 on Christmas Eve," he said. "Your last $23. Marcus said nothing. "Carol Harrison is my niece," Gerald said. Silence. "I didn't know that," Marcus said. "I know you didn't. I didn't give her the money because of who she was. I know that too." Gerald looked at him steadily. "That's why I'm here." Gerald Marsh, Marcus would learn in the next 20 minutes, ran a private family foundation that had been quietly funding small business loans, housing stabilization grants, and emergency assistance programs in the Midwest for 11 years. He was not a public figure. He did not give interviews. He had been, by multiple accounts, looking for a reason to expand the foundation's direct assistance work for 2 years, and had been told repeatedly by his board that the problem wasn't money. It was finding people worth trusting with it. He sat down across from Marcus at the kitchen table where the overdue notices had been spread out 72 hours ago. "I want to offer you a job," Gerald said. "Community Outreach Coordinator for the Foundation. You'd identify families in crisis, vet applications for emergency funds, manage relationships with local service providers. Pays a salary. Comes with benefits. It comes with a car." Marcus stared at him. "I'm a construction project manager," he said. "Or I was. You're a man who gives away his last $23 to a stranger on Christmas Eve. I can teach someone how to run outreach. I cannot teach that." Marcus looked at Raymond. Raymond looked at the ceiling, then back at Marcus. "I told you," he said simply. "Let people help." Downstairs in the parking lot, Marcus's old neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who had told her daughter 2 months ago that she felt sorry for the young man upstairs, that it was a shame the way his life had gone, was watching the 5 black SUVs from behind her curtain. She saw the men in the long coats. She saw the leather folders. She went very still. Her daughter called her later. "Mom, what was going on over there today?" "I don't know exactly," she said. "But I think I may have misread that young man." Raymond's cousin, a woman named Denise, different Denise, not Marcus's ex-wife, had been there the night Marcus came in for the $1.89 coffee. She told Raymond he was wasting his time, that the world didn't work the way he thought, that nobody cared about a stranger's story. She heard about the SUVs through Raymond's phone call that afternoon. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Well." Back upstairs in the apartment, Lily had climbed down from her chair and walked over to stand next to her father. She didn't fully understand what was happening. She knew there were important people in their living room. She knew her dad looked like he was trying very hard to keep his face normal. She took his hand. And Marcus Hale, who had not cried in front of anyone in 3 years, not since the night the divorce was finalized and he'd sat in his car in a parking garage for 45 minutes before going home to his daughter, felt something break open in his chest. Not grief. Not relief. Something older than both. Gerald Marsh watched this. Then he reached into the leather folder the quiet man had been carrying, and he set a single document on the kitchen table. "Take your time," he said. "We'll wait." 6 months later, Marcus drove to work in a dark green Subaru that didn't make any unusual sounds when he accelerated. He had a badge that said Marsh Family Foundation on it, and a desk in a warm office where the coffee was always on, and a caseload of 12 families he checked in with every week. He knew each of their kids' names. Lily started 2nd grade in September. Her teacher called Marcus 2 weeks in to tell him she was one of those kids, the ones who made class easier to run, who somehow already understood that other people's feelings were real and worth paying attention to. "She's extraordinary," the teacher said. He knew. On the windowsill of his new apartment, 2 bedrooms, plenty of light, the stuffed animals were still arranged in their semicircle. The meeting, Lily called it, still in session. The rabbit, Clover, sat in the center now, presiding. There is a version of this story where Marcus does not stop at the gas station, where he walks past the crying woman and the small boy leaning against her arm, where he gets in his car and drives home and wakes up on Christmas morning with his $23 still in his pocket and nothing else. That version is shorter, quieter, and in it, Marcus never learns what he was capable of, or what the world was capable of returning to him. What he did was not noble. He wasn't thinking about karma or character or the long arc of the universe. He was a man who saw a need and couldn't walk away from it. That's all. A simple, unglamorous, financially irrational act of care. And it changed everything. Here is the question worth sitting with. What do we leave behind when we walk past someone who needs us? And what do we become when we don't? Think about that. Share it with someone who needs it. And if this story moved you, if some part of it felt true, like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness is never wasted. Subscribe to Solo Dad Stories for more stories about sacrifice, strength, and second chances. Every week we bring you the stories of ordinary men doing extraordinary things, not because they expect to be rewarded, but because they can't imagine doing anything else. We'll see you in the next one.